Transition and Scale Through Disruption. Executive Insight Series. Briefing number 5. The CEO Bottleneck. Why can a successful business become too dependent on its founder and CEO to keep growing? Opening. There is a point in many successful businesses where the thing that helped create growth can quietly become the thing that limits it. The founder. Not because the founder is doing something wrong. Quite the opposite. They built the business, they know the customers, they understand the market, they have made the critical decisions, they have solved the difficult problems, they have carried the organization through periods of uncertainty. And for a while, that level of personal involvement is exactly what the business needs. But as the organization grows, something changes. The number of decisions increases. The organization becomes more complex, more people become involved, more functions depend on one another, and suddenly too many decisions still come back to the CEO. The business may continue growing, but the CEO becomes increasingly central to keeping it moving, and that creates a new question. When does the founder's involvement stop being the engine of growth and start becoming a constraint on it? Executive observation. One of the most common challenges we see in scaling businesses is not a lack of ambition. It is founder dependency. The founder remains the final decision maker. The person everyone turns to when something is unclear, the person who resolves conflicts, the person who makes the difficult commercial calls, the person who knows what good looks like, the person who steps in when execution slows. And because they are capable of doing all of these things, the organization continues to rely on them. But there is a hidden cost. The organization can only move as fast as the CEO can move. That becomes particularly important in a market where competitive advantage is increasingly determined by how quickly an organization can read its environment, decide, adapt, and win. The growth paradox. Here's the paradox. The more successful the founder becomes, the more valuable their time becomes. Yet the organization can simultaneously become more dependent on that time. At an earlier stage, the founder may be able to make almost every important decision personally. At scale, that model becomes increasingly difficult. The organization needs decisions to happen closer to where the information exists. It needs leaders who can make decisions without constantly escalating them. It needs teams that understand the strategic direction and can translate it into action. And it needs the operating model to support that distributed decision-making. Otherwise, growth creates a queue, and the CEO becomes the queue. Social listening. This challenge shows up in remarkably simple questions. Why do so many decisions still come back to me? Why does everyone wait for me before moving forward? Why can't my leadership team just make the decision? Why do I still have to be involved in everything? And perhaps the most important, how do I scale the business beyond my personal involvement? These questions aren't necessarily signs of a weak leadership team. They can be signs that the organization has outgrown its current leadership and capability architecture. The founder has scaled. The business has scaled. But the capabilities of the team did not scale at the same pace. Decision-making, accountability, leadership capability, and execution capacity have not evolved fast enough to support the next stage of growth. And when organizational capability lags behind business complexity, the gap inevitably finds its way back to the CEO. Strategic advisory perspective. The solution isn't simply to tell the CEO, delegate more. Delegation without the required organizational capabilities can simply move tasks around without solving the underlying dependency. The real issue is building an organization that can carry the strategy through the business. The transition. The shift from founder-led growth to scalable leadership is therefore not simply about delegating more. It is to make the organization less dependent on the CEO for translating strategy into tactical plans and moving them to operations and looping back to report what they did based on correct targets and key performance indicators. That means the organization needs the capabilities to carry that process through the business. The founder has scaled, the business has scaled, but the capabilities of the team did not scale at the same pace. And when the capabilities of the team do not scale with the business, too much of the translation, coordination, decision-making, and follow-through continues to come back to the CEO. The result is a growing business that still depends heavily on the person who built it. The CEO bottleneck. This is where the CEO bottleneck becomes visible. The issue is not simply that the CEO is too involved. The issue is that the organization has not yet developed the capability to take strategy, translate it into tactical plans, move those plans into operations, execute against the correct targets and key performance indicators, and loop back to report what was done and what was achieved. When that capability exists, the CEO can focus on the strategic direction and the decisions that genuinely require CEO involvement. The organization becomes capable of moving strategy through the business without the CEO having to personally drive every step. That is what allows the organization to scale beyond the founder's personal involvement. The strategy to execution loop. A scalable organization needs to be able to move through the full cycle: strategy, tactical plans, strategic decision-making, operations and execution, targets and key performance indicators, monitoring and reporting, learning and feedback, and then back to strategy. The CEO should not have to personally push every part of that loop. The organization needs the capability to run it, because when the CEO becomes the person who repeatedly translates strategy, coordinates the tactical response, moves plans into operations, follows up execution, and brings the information back, the CEO becomes the central operating mechanism of the business, and that creates a ceiling. The leadership shift. The CEO's role therefore evolves, not from involved to uninvolved, but from personally driving execution to building the organizational capability to execute. The CEO increasingly needs to focus on the questions that only the CEO should answer. Where are we going? What markets will we win? What capabilities must we build? What strategic bets will we make? What will we stop doing? What kind of organization do we need to become? The organization then needs to have the capability to translate those strategic decisions into action, bring the results and learning back into the loop, and report outcomes to the CEO. The bigger question. So perhaps the question isn't, how can I delegate more? The deeper question is, does my organization have the capability to translate strategy into action, execute against the right targets and key performance indicators, and report back without everything coming through me? Because if the answer is no, the issue isn't simply CEO workload, it is organizational capability, and that is a much more important issue to solve. Reflection questions. Take these into your next leadership team discussion. How many decisions still require CEO involvement today? Which decisions genuinely require the CEO and which ones don't? Where does the translation from strategy into tactical plans break down? How effectively are tactical plans moved into operations? Does the team have the capabilities required to execute the strategy? Are the right targets and key performance indicators clearly understood? Does the organization consistently report back what it actually did and what it achieved? Where does information or feedback get lost before it reaches the CEO? What would happen to the business if the CEO stepped away from day-to-day decisions for 30 days? What would need to change for the organization to run this entire strategy to execution loop without the CEO having to personally drive every step? Key takeaways. A successful CEO can become an organizational bottleneck without intending to. Founder dependency often increases as the organization grows. Delegation alone does not solve CEO dependency. The capabilities of the team need to scale with the business. Strategy needs to be translated into tactical plans and moved into operations. Execution needs to be measured against the correct targets and key performance indicators. Results and learning need to loop back into strategic decision-making. The organization needs to develop the capability to run this cycle without the CEO personally driving every step. The goal isn't to build a business that needs a great CEO to make every decision. It is to build an organization capable of translating strategy into action, executing it, measuring it, and feeding the learning back into the CEO for the next decision. That is how a successful business begins to scale beyond the personal involvement of its founder. Executive invitation. If this topic resonates, we warmly invite you to join our Transition and Scale Through Disruption Executive VIP Masterclass. We explore the executive capabilities required to build organizations that become stronger through disruption, adapt faster than competitors, and maximize margins, growth, and enterprise value. Discover practical insights, executive perspectives, and proven approaches to help you build a more anti-fragile organization, one that can read its environment, decide with confidence, adapt with purpose, and strengthen its competitive position in changing markets. We hold this Executive VIP Masterclass monthly. To see the date of the next session and reserve your place, simply visit Eventbrite and type on the event page Transition and Scale Through Disruption. Coming next. Executive Briefing number 6. Leadership teams that scale. What distinguishes leadership teams that enable growth from those that become a constraint to it? In our next executive briefing, we'll explore the characteristics of leadership teams that scale successfully, and why building leadership capacity is essential when the business can no longer depend on the CEO to carry everything. Until then, continue leading with clarity, continue building adaptability, and continue scaling with intention. I'm Madiha Mouchtak, and thank you for listening, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next Executive Insight.